So folks, my name is Jim Ludes. I am the Vice President for Strategic Initiatives and Executive Director of the Pell Center at Salve Regina University. It's my distinct pleasure to welcome everybody here tonight. Before we get into the program though, we want to begin with a land acknowledgement. And to do that for us, I'm going to invite Lorén Spear from the Tomaquag Museum to offer that acknowledgement. Lorén.
Ascoi Kwasin, Natasuis Makasini Pashao at Nahai Gansik, Natasuis Lorén Spears at English at Nin Nahai Gansik Nahantik, Kanupiam at Aki at Nahai Gansik, Kanupiam Wuchi Nitampawag Ka Nitangsawag at Aki at Nahai Gansik, Katabatash Katantwa Wuchi Wuni Nakan Wuni Tiawank. Kantamu, Wami Sakwan, Kisakwan, Takwanik, Kapaponi, Pashao, Nashbi, Wani Tiawank, Katabatash Katantwa, Wuchikama Guanash, Namanatum. So what I said to you in my language is I said hello and that my name is Lorén Spears. I am the Executive Director of Tomaquag Museum. And my traditional name is Makasini Pashao, and I am Narragansett Niantic. And welcome to all my friends and relatives to the homelands of the Narragansett people. It's really important for us to think about all the gifts that have been given to us. So I thanked the Creator for all the beauty that surrounded us. I thanked the Creator for all the beauty of the spring, summer, winter, and fall. And we wish that it bursts forth with beauty. And I gave thanks to the Creator for all our gifts and blessings. As I welcome you today and bless this day, I must acknowledge 400 years of conquest, colonization, genocide, land dispossession, enslavement, forced assimilation, detribalization, and the erasure of the Narragansett and other indigenous nations of the Americas. I must also acknowledge the bravery, the resilience, the perseverance, and adaptability of our ancestors who ensured our continuation, passing forth our traditional ecological knowledge, language, history, culture, while contributing to the creation of this colony, state, and country. There is no US history without Indigenous peoples' history, and there is no Rhode Island history without Narragansett, Niantic, and other Indigenous peoples' histories. This is our homeland since time immemorial. We are still here. May we always remember we are the land, and what we do to the land, we do to ourselves. We must care for Mother Earth to ensure future generations. A land acknowledgement is just the beginning and must be followed by actions. And that is why we established the Indigenous Empowerment program at Tomaquag Museum and represent the museum's exhibits and programs from a first-person perspective. Katabatash Akwane Kanunantam. So thanks, peace, and blessings. And a land acknowledgement, that could take the whole hour. So we're going to give you a link that's a guide to land acknowledgements and also a fun map where you can learn about different Indigenous lands and peoples across not only the United States, but the North and South American continents. So enjoy those resources. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorén. We will post that into the chat on Facebook Live in just a moment. We also have a welcome tonight from United States Senator Jack Reed. I'm going to share my screen again here.
I'm at the Rhode Island Center for the book, reading across Rhode Island's education chair, Maureen Nagle, and two bright stars of the Tomaquag Museum, who will be the driving force of this endeavor. Silvermoon Mars LaRose, and this year's honorary chair, Lorén Spears. This year's book, Firekeeper's Daughter, by Angeline Boulley, opens a window into the experiences and values of her community, the Ojibwe of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Lorén Spears is uniquely positioned to help lead this year's community conversation. In addition to her 25 years as an educator, Lorén is a Narragansett Niantic. Through her nationally recognized work at the Tomaquag Museum, Lorén has been instrumental in empowering Native youth and amplifying Indigenous voices in education, arts, and the humanities. Her leadership helped Tomaquag earn the nation's highest museum and library honor, a national medal. I know Lorén will challenge us to connect creatively and intellectually with this year's book and with each other. Tonight's kickoff is the start of countless enriching conversations and learning opportunities. Best wishes, and again, congratulations on 20 years of reading across Rhode Island.
Senator Reed's a great friend of the Pell Center, and a great friend of Reading Across Rhode Island, a great friend of Rhode Island, obviously. We thank him for sharing those thoughts with us tonight. Folks, we want to get right into the program, as it were. We've got a great panel of speakers to help us launch this Reading Across Rhode Island for 2022. Just a couple of notes. This is not a typical book conversation. The expectation is that this is the kickoff. You don't have to have read the book to be part of this conversation tonight. We're going to do our very best to make sure that we don't do any spoilers. This is one of the great stressors for me in this kind of an event. But we're going to try to have a good conversation about some of the broad themes, about why we do things like a statewide read. And we want to get to conversation with those of you in the audience as well. Because we're doing this on Facebook Live, what we're going to ask you to do is that if you've got a question or a comment that you want put to the panel, you can just go right into the comment section, post a comment, and we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll make sure that those questions and those comments get shared with the community. No need to wait for a special point. If there's something you want to ask, get it in there, and I'll make sure that we get it asked. The folks that we've got tonight, I'm going to get that in 1 second. First, I want to do a quick moment to acknowledge Kate Lentz and her team at the Rhode Island Center for the book. They do an amazing job with this initiative every year. It's a remarkable organization, and our hats are off to them for all of their success, some of which just came literally breaking this afternoon as we went to press. We learned that the last year's effort, an evening for educators on the book Stamped, which was last year's Reading Across Rhode Island selection, today won a National Public Media Award for learning events. And so congratulations to the Rhode Island Center for the book and Reading Across Rhode Island. It was a three-part webinar via Zoom for educators to get them ready to teach the book last year. It's amazing work that they do, and our hats are off to them for all of that recognition. The book that we're here to discuss tonight, Firekeeper's Daughter, itself is quite the award winner. Just in the last 24 hours, it won the Prince Award, the Morris Award, and the AIYLA Honor Book designation from the American Library Association. So this is just really a red letter day for all of us and for everybody at Reading Across Rhode Island. So to get us started tonight, we've got a great panel. You've already met Lorén Spears, Executive Director of the Tomaquag Museum. She's joined by one of her colleagues tonight, Silvermoon LaRose, who's the Assistant Director of the Tomaquag Museum. We're also joined by Maureen Nagle, who's a middle school English teacher at Moses Brown School in Providence. But to get us started, I'd like to turn the conversation over to Amy Vanderweil, who's the chair of Reading Across Rhode Island. Amy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. Welcome to the Rhode Island Center for the Books kickoff of our 20th annual Reading Across Rhode Island program. Like Jim said, it is a banner year so far. We're very excited. My name is Amy Vanderweil. I am the chair of Reading Across Rhode Island, and I'm so glad to welcome you all today. I'm going to keep it real brief, okay, because they have the interesting things to say. So I have a few people to thank and a couple of little things to say. So programming kicks off today and will continue in libraries, schools, bookstores, businesses, senior centers, culminating with a keynote by author Angeline Boulley on May 26th. We have details posted on ribook.org. We're going to drop that in the chat for you so that you know exactly where to go to sign up for something like that. We also have a million programs that I'm sure that Maureen will be talking about a little bit over the course of this evening. So if you're looking for ways to extend your engagement in the programming, we have got just programs coming out of our ears this year, and we're so excited about it. If your class, library, or reading group receives a set of Firekeeper's Daughter, it's because of the generous support of Reading Across Rhode Island sponsors. So a big thank you to Barrington Books, Spartan Gilman, Fidelity Investments, Nugent Capital, Rhode Island Council for the Humanities, Rhode Island PBS, Rhode Island Office of Library and Information Services, the Rhode Island Library Association, and Savoy Bookshop. The scale and impact of this year's Reading Across Rhode Island program isn't possible without the Reading Across Rhode Island committee and countless volunteers who help this program reach into libraries, classrooms, and living rooms all across our state. Our Reading Across Rhode Island committee has put together a resource guide for you all, and I'm sure Maureen will talk a little bit more about this too, including recommendations for relikes, film and podcast episodes, lists of partners and programs happening throughout the state. I especially need to shout out Maureen. She's our tireless education committee chair, and she has worked to create a curriculum guide for all of those looking to incorporate Firekeeper's daughter into your classroom this year. And as well as our programming committee chair, Emily Goodman, who has been keeping us organized, especially with the truly staggering amount of activities we've got coming up. A very special thank you to our Center for the Book members whose contributions support all of our programming. If you'd like to become a member, donate the cost of a book, the cost of a reading group set or a classroom set for schools and libraries, contact Kate Lentz at the Center for the Book. We're going to drop her email in the chat there as well. I mean, I never envy Kate the morning after these events that we just drop her a little email in the chats and she gets inundated. So be kind. Reading Across Rhode Island, it's your One Book, One State program. It's hosted by the Rhode Island Center for the Book. The work of this program has never been about just like recognizing a good book and then just kind of moving on to the next one. As a program, we have a whole list of criteria we use to choose our book. And I think we like to fancy ourselves unbiased critics sometimes, but this program doesn't live in a vacuum, and it's been a rough couple of years. This year, we spent a lot of time considering books that were comforting, that helped us forget about that next wave of COVID or whatever political drama was spiraling on Twitter. But I think the core of this program is in choosing a title that speaks to a moment. And so while I wouldn't describe Firekeeper's Daughter as particularly light or happy, I would call it hopeful. There's hope in how fiercely the community cares for one another. There's hope in Donis, the main character, exploring her connection to the earth, to her tradition. There's hope in how she navigates her identity and history. There's hope in her messy and deeply human search for justice. And I think this is exactly the sort of hope that we need this year. I think I speak for the other folks on the Reading Across Rhode Island committees when I express how thrilled I am to see the different ways you will all share the story with your communities, to see the pieces that your city and your neighborhood and your school connects to and are inspired by. We're so excited to see how this story resonates with the state of Rhode Island, and we're so excited for you. Okay, on to the next.
Awesome, Amy. Thank you so much. So again, we're going to have I'm going to have a little conversation with the folks here, but we want to include the folks who are joining us on Facebook as well. So if you've got a question, you've got a comment, put it right there into the comment section on Facebook Live, and I'll make sure that it gets over to the right people on the panel. So, I wanted to begin maybe with a little bit of a meta question, and maybe Maureen, we'll start with you. Why do a community read?
Hi, Jim. Oh, yeah, great question to start with. Thanks for putting that out into the universe. This is why we do this. I have been in the classroom for 20 years. I spend my days with students talking about books. I want to spread the book love around not just my classroom, but my school, my state, my country. And when you have the pleasure of finding a great book, it makes you want to share it with others, right? That's how we know when we've picked the Reading Across Rhode Island book. It takes months, right? Our committee is at work from January through September every year, trying to find the latest, greatest fiction, nonfiction, books about everything that we think might spark some interest in Rhode Island. And it's a hard task, right? I'm a middle school teacher. I'm someone who embraces a challenge, and it is a great challenge to find the one book that we think will speak to communities across Rhode Island. And for the past 5 years that I've been involved in Reading Across Rhode Island, it's been a great task, but also a great pleasure to find those books, because through our programming, through connecting with readers across the state, we know through the inspired found the right book. And already, since in early December, we've received emails and had conversations with people who are thanking us with armfuls of gratitude for bringing the Firekeeper's Daughter to Rhode Island. Like you mentioned, Jim, it's already won so many awards. The Obama's film company has already optioned it for a series on Netflix. We know this book will capture your hearts, your minds, and we think will really help drive conversation about what's happening in Rhode Island today. As a community reading program, we have a strong ethical commitment to book to action, right? We believe that a book doesn't just have to inspire conversation, but it can inspire real work within our communities. With this book in particular, to think about our Native Indigenous populations today, to think about the history of Rhode Island, about who we are, who we represent, and hopefully bring stories and our cultural heritage to light. This is a book, and I'm so excited to talk about this story because there's a lot to this story, but this is a book written by a Native woman herself. I learned so much through every chapter, and it's a book that inspired me to want to know more. Right after I read the book, I visited the Tomaquag Museum for the first time. And I am a native Rhode Islander, and I've never been to our Native museum, right? So this is a book that I think will inspire us to join in conversations, to learn more, and I think do more. And from my visit to the Tomaquag, I then wanted to go to see the Away from Home exhibit at URI. There's so much great work that I've been so privileged to enjoy in the past few months alone. And I know there's great work ahead, and I can't wait for the conversation in Rhode Island around the Firekeeper's daughter. And I'm so happy for Angeline Boulley for winning the awards yesterday for her debut novel, right? She is a woman who spent 10 years writing this book, and to have it as successful as it is already, I'm thrilled for her and can't wait to bring her to Rhode Island to get to meet us and for her to celebrate her efforts.
Thank you so much, Maureen. Lorén, I'm curious, when they approached you to be this year's honorary chair of reading across Rhode Island, and they told you that the book was going to be Firekeeper's Daughter, at least I'm assuming that was the sequence, that they already had the book. What was your reaction?
I need to read the book. Before I could say yes, I wanted to know whether it was a Native author representing their own community. I wanted to know that the book represented indigeneity in a way that I honored and respected. And once I read the book, I was in. And I'm so excited for the author to win so many awards in their debut book. It's phenomenal. But as a Native person, we get told and asked to review lots of books, and they're often by non-Native people thinking they understand Native communities. And I think this is what's so intriguing about this book. Even though it's a fictional book, even though it's a mystery, it layers in so many facets of Indigenous culture and community in the 21st century, which most people don't get to see. They don't get a little snapshot or a little peek into those communities, which this book gives. And so, I was very honored and humbled to be asked to be the honorary chairperson. And I was thrilled that I could say yes, and that I was excited to uplift this author and this story, which I thought was really wonderful. So I really enjoyed it a lot. And someone that has to read a lot of books, I don't always enjoy them. Sometimes they're heartbreaking in a way that's really painful because it's our lives, our history, the intergenerational and historical trauma. And even though that's reflected in this book, there's also a lot of story and characters that you can connect to and that you can root for in ways that makes it just an enjoyable read as well.
I think it's my own little editorial note here is that this was an extremely enjoyable read. Like this was not, I read a lot of books too, and a lot of books I read I have to read. I actually enjoyed this one. And so in addition to sort of learning something and all of the good things that come from this kind of dialogue, it was just a good read. Silvermoon, I'm curious, a lot of the themes that the book explores are around sovereignty, identity, legal recognition and status. When you think about the way it's depicted in Firekeeper's Daughter, how does that resonate with the Native experience in Rhode Island?
One of the things that stuck out to me as soon as I started reading this book is how represented I felt. It felt like I was reading conversations that I have had with community members, with friends, with colleagues here at work. We often have questions of indigeneity, how who gets to call themselves Indigenous? What does that mean? What are the varying levels? We're the only nationality of people that constantly have to prove who we are and our lineage. And even when we prove where we come from, there's still the question of how much. How much are you engaged? How much is your blood quantum? What are your kinship ties? So there's a constant conversation that we have around issues of indigeneity and identity. So reading this book, it just felt like, I don't know, the whole book felt like Easter eggs all over the place of topic areas and issues and words and phrases that we use every day. And now you're seeing those represented. Even the main character's name, Donis, in Narragansett language, Tonis is daughter. So Natonis is actually my niece's name. It means my daughter. So when I'm reading Nadonis, I'm thinking of my own niece, and you just felt so connected to the characters, to the language, to seeing all those things represented. I think that's extremely empowering. Representation matters. And it's exciting to be able to share this book with community members and be able to have these open conversations about things that we talk about all the time, but maybe are not a part of other people's everyday conversations.
You know, Maureen, in our little pre-session conversation last week, you said that representation was extremely important in the selection of this particular book this year. Talk to us a little bit about the selection process. How do you actually decide what the book is going to be in a given year, and how did you come to focus on Firekeeper's daughter?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Jim. It's rare that the selection process is an easy one because we have a lot of readers who have strong opinions about books, which is great, right? And it leads to rich conversations. And like I said, it's hard to find the book that we think will speak to people across communities, across generations. But, you know, thinking about what Silvermoon has shared about, you know, why this book, why does it mean so much to who we are today? I could share a story about running into a student at my school. This is a student who I hadn't seen for a while, and I ran into her outside late fall, and we had just selected the Firekeeper's daughter. And I just started chatting with her, and she's in her junior year. She's kind of there's a lot going on in life during your junior year of high school. So she was sharing some of this with me and dove into talking about a big research project she was in the middle of. And while it was clearly something that was very hard and challenging, I could tell she was so inspired to do this work because it was a research project about her identity as Ojibwe. And she was able to use this project at school to research her own personal identity and think about who she is and how she is represented in the world today. And it was this aha moment for me of, this is why we choose this novel. This is why we spent weeks thinking about, why does Rhode Island need this novel this year? Because representation matters. And as educators, right, as people who care deeply about our students and these pivotal moments in their lives where they're thinking about who they are and what their place is in the world, it's essential that we have books in classrooms that represent our students, who allow for space and time to discuss and think about how we pass through the world together, who I am and how I exist in the world among others. And for this student, it meant the world to her that we were choosing this book, and to know that it would be alive in classrooms across the state. I could see her feeling affirmed and excited. And she will be a student who's going to join us for our Evening for Educators program that I'll talk about later on.
Super. Lorén, you know, the book itself is not written by someone who's Narragansett, but from another community in Michigan. How much cultural variation, I guess, is there between different tribal communities? How representational is this of the lived experience in Rhode Island?
So, I mean, every nation is its own nation for sure, but the Ojibwe people certainly have a kinship to us in that we're Algonquian speakers. We come from a root language similar to Portuguese, Spanish, Italian is in the same language family. Our languages are in the same language family, and they were pushed west. So they originally were more east than they currently are. So there's similarities in that way. But I think when you really think about this story and the importance there, it's about the fact that it's representing Indigenous communities today in the 21st century. Most of the time, our stories are told about 400 years ago, especially at the class of conquest and colonization, but it doesn't speak to who are Indigenous people today. It doesn't speak to the historical and intergenerational trauma, which this story does weave in. And it doesn't speak to who we are as a people today and what those kinship relationships are and what those community values are. What's that traditional ecological knowledge that's been passed forth, those cultural culture bearers that are bringing things forward into the 21st century. It doesn't speak to those things. So this is what is so exciting about this book, is it speaks to a lot of things that resonate in many Native communities. It speaks to language. It speaks to traditional ecological knowledge, or the knowledge of medicinals and plant life and the interrelationship of what we call our relatives, animals, plants, minerals, all of those things that are connected to this earth. There's this understanding of what it means to be Indigenous, and also what it means to live in the 21st century and be Indigenous. So I think that that's what's really powerful about this book. And I think, thinking about what Maureen said, it's really important for Native students to see themselves reflected in the curriculum and in the books that they read, but not just in a past tense historical way. And so this is what is so vibrant about this choice of a book, is that it really gives people a peek into what it is like to be Indigenous in the 21st century, what it's like to think about sovereignty and tribal communities and growing up Indigenous and being connected to multiple communities, and how that all manifests in your identity, and how to be Indigenous in the 21st century, I guess. We all as Indigenous people understand that, but the outside community doesn't understand the dynamics and the kinship relationships and the as my grandfather always said, having one foot in each canoe. And that's like the canoe of your traditional life and then the modern American world. And how do you balance the two of those things, which of course is tricky, because if you had to stand up in two canoes, that's very tricky. And so is this. We live a life that's complex and very tricky. And in this book, it really shows that complexity and the layers of relationship and the bond of community, and the difficulty of jurisdiction and relationship to federal jurisdiction, state jurisdiction, tribal jurisdiction in the sense of criminal law, right? And so there's just so much complexity there. It's exciting, and I think it gives people a little glimmer of what Indigenous people are dealing with as far as who they are and sovereignty and what that looks like.
I found myself fascinated and pondering, even after I would sit down a chapter, about the delicate balance that the main character had to do between her own Native heritage and her own ties to her community, and also her presence in that modern world. And so Silvermoon, I wonder, how does that resonate in your own experience, the kind of things that Lorén is talking about, having to navigate both that traditional culture, one foot in one canoe and another foot in another canoe?
I think that's a topic area that lots of Indigenous young people are really going to enjoy reading about, that experience from this character's point of view, because we all have that sense from the time that we grow up and enter kindergarten and we're leaving our home for the first time and the warmth of our family and our community, and we're stepping into a world of many different people. We all have that experience regardless of nationality. When you leave home and now you go out into the greater world, But when that world differs significantly from how things are in your world, that can be really challenging. It can be scary. And it takes years to get the hang of it. And you're constantly juggling both sides. There are literally conversations, phrases, slang that we use within our communities that's not understood outside of our communities. So there's kind of that code switching that goes on from when you're with your own versus when you're in mixed settings. Also how you're perceived by the world. So there's issues that are unique to Native communities, some that are very difficult to talk about and deal with, that we keep insular, that we discuss within our community that we don't necessarily want to share outside of our community. So learning how to navigate the nuances of how much you want to share and how much you want to say. You kind of see this in a book a little bit when she talks about issues of per capita in Native communities, where that's something that's not necessarily wanting to be discussed outside of your community because of all of the I keep using the word nuances. I need a new word. But all of the nuances that go on with that, we understand in our communities that receiving support from tribes, not every tribe has per capita. Those that do, there's good and bad that come with getting that, opportunities that are opened, resources that are provided, but there's also now access to funds to fund things that are not healthy for us, that are not, redeeming for our communities. And so it's not necessarily something you like to talk outside of your tribal community because they won't understand all of the complexities of that. It's kind of voyeuristic to have people on the outside looking at these internal issues. So you kind of learn how to navigate those conversations throughout your entire life. And it's something that's we're still doing now as grown adults.
Especially working in a museum, because people ask us a lot of questions and we have to learn where's the line. And for us, there is a line. There's some things that are for the Native community and some things that are for the general public. And as Native people working in a public educational space, we sometimes have to figure out where that line is and also teach other educators where that line is if they're young and might not know.
Maureen, so let me remind folks too, if you've got a question or a comment that you'd like to go, we got a lot of great comments already from folks who are enjoying the book, loving the audio version, loving the conversation here. But if you've got a question or a comment you'd like to put to the entire panel, post it into the chat there on Facebook Live, and I'll make sure that it goes to the panel. Maureen, this is also really a universal story too. This sheds a lot of light about how young people find themselves. And as a middle school teacher, I know that you this is the world you live in. And I wonder if you could reflect on that a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love to. As we were working on the resource directory, and one part of the Reading Rhode Island experience that I really look forward to each year is writing the introductory letter to kind of welcome readers into the book. And it took me a long time to write the shortest paragraph, which is the little blurb about the book. Like you said, Jim, you don't want to give away too much, but you want to tell just enough to get people into the story to think like, yeah, I want to read that book. And that was the part that I chose to write about Donis's, her journey. The novel, Angeline Boulley was very strategic and wise about how she structured her novel. It is structured as a journey. And in each of the 4 parts, she is journeying in a different direction. And it mirrors Donis's journey, right? From the very beginning, she has to make these hard decisions about where her life should go. And through each decision, she has to decide, is this about me or is it about my community? The very first one to decide whether or not I should go to medical school or stay home to take care of my ailing grandmother, right? That's a question of, do I follow my dreams or do I stay and take care of a community that has taken such great care of me? So, as she journeys through each direction that is full of everything. There's something for everything in this book. There is an FBI investigation. There's an opioid epidemic underlying all of it. There's a massive high-speed car chase. Through all of it, she's figuring out who she is. And kind of like getting back to what Silvermoon was saying, Angeline Boulley doesn't offer easy answers. And maybe that's why I really appreciate this book. She's not didactically trying to explain, what the experience is. She's offering us to join Donis on this journey to figure out, how do I navigate this really complex life? She is the daughter of her community. She has a white mother who's a member of the social elite. She has a father who's a star hockey player, a member of the Ojibwe Native community. And through it all, she's figuring out who she is. Where can she be a part of both of those? Where can she be a part of one or the other? Those are the puzzle pieces that she has to put together. Yeah.
Well, and what's so fascinating to me is that she is both. Right. So the Silvermoon used the adjective nuanced. And this really is a complicated, multifaceted character in the main character, Donis. She's got all of this scientific aptitude, right? She's thinking about being a doctor. She's got all of the scientific knowledge that she's learned, and she meets people and she views them almost with a surgeon's appreciation of the way their musculoskeletal system is put together. But she also has all of this traditional knowledge too, particularly traditional ecological knowledge. Lorén, could you speak to the importance of TEK, traditional ecological knowledge, in Native communities?
Sure. So, the way that we look at it, it's really the knowledge that's passed down to us and how we connect and have relationship with the land. And so we look at the gifts of the land, and that can be things from the water, things from the land, plants, animals, minerals, everything. And how do we have relationship? And part of that relationship is something edible, is something medicinal, is something useful, or a type of technology? Is it spiritual? And we look at it in that holistic way. So when we're looking at a particular plant, we're not just thinking of it as a pretty plant, but all of those things as the gift that's been given to us that we should have thanks for. And so I think when they delve into her traditional ecological knowledge, it speaks to how that's passed down generationally, how she literally has relationship with the plant life that she's, out foraging for. I won't give any hints. There's an interesting connection here. I'm not gonna give away too much, right? So, but it's a really interesting way that traditional knowledge is woven into the storyline. And I think that, Angeline Boulley really did a great job of weaving in various tenets of traditional life and community life into the story. It doesn't tell you everything, but it's not supposed to. It's supposed to give you a picture of a community from this main character's viewpoint, her relationship with the people in the community, with the plant life and the animal life, and just the community as a whole. And I think that's really impactful and powerful. And, here at the museum, Silvermoon, myself, we do traditional ecological knowledge walks and talks, but we also last year had guest speakers that came in from various tribal communities all around the Northeast, actually, that came to Tomaquag and gave those talks. And I'm sure we'll have more as this 2022 progresses. So if people want to learn more about traditional ecological knowledge, they can come to the museum and learn how that intersects.
Super, thank you. Maureen, we've got about 10-15 minutes left here. I'm curious, for a lot of folks in the chat talking about their book clubs, planning to read it. If we want to activate this conversation in communities, what resources are available for folks to do that?
All right, buckle yourselves in, everyone, because I'm about to dive into a whole lot of programming that we've put together. Amy prepped you for this earlier in the event, and I'll try not to dive too deeply into any one event. just a little bit about each one and encourage you to visit ribook.org to find out more. Especially on the website, you will find, just added last week, our 2022 resource directory. You'll see there a welcome letter, and just after that is a program guide that lists each event, when it's going to happen, who's going to be presenting, with a link to register for it. Most of our events already have the registration page set up, so you can visit that to find out more. And we hope that you'll join us for any programming that sounds interesting. There's a lot, because we have a lot of readers, and we want to offer programming that people will find their way into based on whatever community you might be a part of, whether no matter what generation you're a part of. And we hope that the programming events will bring generations and communities together to enjoy this book and our companion reads. So let's see, on February 2nd, coming up is our next session. It's called the Webinar for Librarians. So this is aimed specifically at librarians who want to build programming around the Reading Across Rhode Island book in their own libraries. And that's going to be from 10 to 11 o'clock in the morning on February 2nd. The link is on our page. And then on February 15th, this is our Evening for Educators. This will be the third year that we're offering this program, specifically designed for teachers who might consider using this book in the classroom, or perhaps for an all-school read or a summer read for students. As Jim said, we just got news today that last year's Evening for Educators won the National Public Media Award in the category of education programming. So we're thrilled for that news, thrilled that the work is being recognized, because this is a very hardworking group of people who get together to build the programming so that teachers feel confident in their ability to introduce the book to students and guide students through the text. So that event is going to be on February 15th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Any teachers who attend will get free book sets of Firekeeper's Daughter and a certificate for professional development. And again, you can sign up on our website. In March, or perhaps early April, the date on this is to be determined, we will hold the first Firekeeper's Daughter book club panel with the Tomaquag Museum. I am really looking forward to this new event this year. I think book club members will especially be interested, because it will almost be like a virtual book club where you'll get to watch and listen to a group of people enjoying a conversation about the book. So many thanks to Silvermoon and Lorén for leading that effort. I can't wait to attend myself. On March 14th, we're partnering with RISD. They're going to have one of their RISD Museum Teachers Lounge. It's called Best Practice for Teaching and Learning About Native Americans, Part 2, Engaging with Native Art and Objects in the Museums. And the link to sign up for that is on the resource guide. Of course, on May 26th, the big day, Angeline herself will be in Rhode Island, and we have two events planned for that day. At 1 o'clock, it will be a virtual event for high school students. Thankful to the Tomaquag Museum for hosting this event. Angeline will be beaming in from the Tomaquag Museum, connecting with high school students. That link is up, I think, on our website, so you can sign up, or it will be up soon. And then at 6:30 p.m., she will be live in person. Cross your fingers. At the Pell Center, Ochre Court. And those tickets will be on our website, hopefully sometime in March. So just keep your eyes out for that. And I'd also like to highlight one of our newer facets of Reading Across Rhode Island, which is our Companion Reads program. One of the challenges, as I've mentioned, is finding a book that speaks to communities across generations. For Firekeeper's Daughter, we are recommending it for upper high school. You know, even young adult spans a range of ages. And given some of the content of this book, we think it's more, it's going to read more so for upper, I would call it upper YA, like 15 years old and higher. So because of that, we wanted to offer books that might speak to different generations or different types of Robin Wall Kimmerer, the author of Braiding Sweetgrass. She's going to be coming to Rhode Island virtually for an author event. And that will be on April 15th at 7 p.m. We hope you'll enjoy that book. It's a bit of science, poetry, a lot of the ecological knowledge that Lorén was talking about. And then we're also going to welcome Carol Lindstrom and Michaela Good, the author and illustrator of We Are Water Protectors. And they'll be coming virtually on May 4th at 1 p.m. And we imagine a lot of teachers and students might want to zoom in for that session. Sure to be great. And then here is our middle grade companion read. This is a brilliant new book called Ancestor Approved Intertribal Stories for Kids. It's a series of short stories targeted mainly for upper elementary, I would say, maybe into middle school. And that's written by Cynthia Leatrick Smith, who will be Zooming with us on April 6th at 1 p.m. And there's one more, of course, because there are so many great books by Native authors right now, and in the past too. Voices of the Warp and Weft, edited by Amber Bliss and Madeline Hutchins. A selection of poetry written by Native Americans. And that will be sometime later in the spring. We don't have the event determined yet, but so much great reading and discussions sure to come. And I'm not yet done. I have a couple of more. We also offer a book club in a bag program. So we encourage you to check in with your local library, who may have a tote bag like this, filled with copies of The Firekeeper's Daughter and resource guides and pamphlets, questions to get your book discussion started that we loan out to book clubs to enjoy their experience. We also offer a Read to Lead program. So this is for anyone who might be interested in starting a book club at their workplace. And we offer book sets and programming guides. And you can contact Kate at ribook.org to learn more about that. And lastly, we also partner with Living Literature, one of our amazing local nonprofit arts organizations who have already put together a 30-minute presentation, reader's theater style, of The Firekeeper's Daughter. They are brilliant. I've been so lucky to enjoy so many living literature programs over the past few years. So you can contact tanyamartin3@gmail.com to learn more about how to get living literature into your school or workplace or program. I hope I didn't miss anything, but it's okay if I did because it's all on the website.
That was a tour de force. It's no wonder you won a National Public Media Award. I mean, come on. That was awesome.
Buckle in, I meant it.
That was awesome. And not only that, you anticipated some of the questions that were in the chat too about the appropriate age for Firekeeper's Daughter. You know, we got just a couple of minutes left here, and I want to come back to Silvermoon and Lorén and ask you, you know, if someone in the audience has never been to the Tomaquag Museum, what can they expect if they come visit you?
Well, I can expect a lot. So they certainly can come and visit our exhibit gallery. There's 12 exhibits here to look at and be guided by an educator and learn more about local Native history, culture, the arts, the traditional ecological knowledge, the technologies. You can learn a lot. You can come for a drop-by visit on a Wednesday 10 to 5 or a Saturday 10 to 2. Our site here is small in rural Exeter, but where we do a lot of virtual programming, as well as we'll come to your organization for large groups. We do booked tours, programs. We'll have a long list of programming that will be on our website shortly because we're planning out our winter spring schedule, and it should be posted live in not too long on tomaquagmuseum.org. We have a whole resources page on our website where if they don't get right to the museum in this winter weather, they can check out our website, and there's lots of resources for teachers on our resources page, curriculum, films, partner projects that we've done in the past that they can get links right directly to. We have a blog that tells all kinds of information, YouTube with lots of films and programs that have been recorded, particularly in the last 2 years of this COVID time where lots have been recorded. We have virtual book club, we have virtual children's hour, and there's lots of resources for teachers and families. And every day we're adding new things. And for those that don't know, we're knee deep in new museum development as well. And we're, growing and shifting and changing. And in a couple of years, we'll be located in a new place that will give us a lot more accessibility and bigger spaces to take in bigger groups and programs. So we're looking forward to that as well. And they can learn more about that on our website as well. Is there anything I forgot, Silvermoon?
No, I think that's everything. And if we did miss anything, you can always reach out to us by email, through our website, and any questions that we can ask. We're always there to give insight and offer resources and support. We want to share Indigenous culture with the community. We want to be a resource for, growing an understanding of Indigenous people. Getting rid of Indigenous invisibility within our communities. We want you to meet people from our communities. We want you to learn how to engage, how to educate, and we want to support you in that. So we're always there for any questions, any help that anybody needs. Feel free to send us a message.
It's an exceptional museum, and people, if they haven't been, they ought to come visit you. We've got a question here, Maureen. Are the Reading Across Rhode Island resources limited to groups based in Rhode Island? Your reach is global now. It's the internet.
That's a great question, and one that I haven't answered before. So I'd like to say no, and here's an example. The first resource guide we ever created was for Rising, Dispatches from the New American Shore by Elizabeth Rush. And we posted that resource guide public on our website. There's a crew of volunteers who spend, as I said, weeks, months putting that guide together. And since then, periodically, every few months, I'll have someone reach out to me, a professor in Louisiana, who might say, we've chosen this book as our sophomore class read. Would it be okay if we used your resource guide? Absolutely. Please enjoy the resources that are public on our website. So I do think that, yes, those resources are able to be shared. Please share them, to our audience, share them widely. As for books, I'm not sure the answer to that question. I do know that last year, we distributed 10,000 copies of stamps to libraries and classrooms. We predicted that Rhode Island wanted to read stamped, and clearly Rhode Island said, yes, we need this book in our classrooms and book clubs and libraries. So that's my best answer. There may be more. So I'd say to anyone who has that question, feel free to reach out to kate@ribook.org to find out more about the extent of our efforts beyond Rhode Island.
Super. And so for folks who are watching this on Facebook Live, this whole conversation and all of the links that have been posted, and there's been just a real wonderful exchange going on here in the chat. That's going to be up there. That's going to live in perpetuity. So if you want to, if you're not sure what some of those links were, they're in the chat. You could grab them there, and that'll be up forever, as it were. We're just about out of time. I wonder if we could just go around the horn real quick. Silvermoon, we'll start with you, and maybe each of you could just reflect for a moment on what do you think the principal, most important thing to take away from this book is.
Ooh, and that question had to start with me. I really think it's hearing an Indigenous voice, a contemporary Indigenous voice. This book gives you a chance to engage with an Indigenous community that is living and vibrant and ever evolving right now, and to hear what's going on within that community, as is happening with Native communities all across Turtle Island. So this gives you a chance to kind of step into somebody else's world, a living being right now, a community member, so that you can learn a different perspective. I think learning all perspectives are really important to growing our diversity, to growing our communities, and to undo biases and stereotypes. And this book just does that wonderfully. Really great opportunity to start engaging in new ways of thinking.
Super. Maureen, same question to you.
Yeah, I think like we talked about, this is an exploration of Donis's identity, and for all of us, our identity doesn't develop in a vacuum, right? It develops by living in community with others. And that's why Reading Across Rhode Island exists, right? It is a community reading program. And there is so much richness that we can gain from our lives by shared experiences with others. So I would say that is something I'm super excited is to have conversations about how Donis's identity is developed through her interactions with her community. Some of them are really hard, and she learns important lessons about who she is. And I think that extends the message of Reading Across Rhode Island, which is how we grow as a community through our discussions about great books with each other and through our programming with amazing organizations like the Tomaquag Museum.
Lorén, we're going to give you the final word here. Same question. What do you think the most important takeaway from the book is?
So I think it's the connection to place and people. So it's, that's part of being Indigenous, but it's also part of being human. And so I think that's why everyone can connect to the book. It tells you in depth about the place. It connects you to the traditional ecological knowledge of that place and how that connects to the community and their culture. And I think that also reverts right back to identity, which you both mentioned in different kinds of ways. So I think all of us as humans can see ourselves in these characters. And so I think that's why it speaks to everyone. Even if someone knows nothing about Indigenous culture, it speaks to you as a human and the interrelationships of family, community, the place that you identify as home and what that is. So I think that that's really important in the story and in the theme of this. It's her identity is steeped in the place. It's steeped in the community. It's steeped in everything that surrounds her, including the ecological world. And so I think that is instrumental in the story, but also why we all connect to it.
I think that this has been a heck of a great conversation. If you haven't read the book, you're going to love it. I think you probably heard some of the passion and some of the enthusiasm tonight. I want to thank Lorén Spears, Silvermoon, Mars, LaRose, Maureen, Nagle, our panelists tonight, Amy Vanderweil for her welcome. Kate Lentz does an amazing job. The work that the Rhode Island Center for the Book does blows me away every year. Senator Jack Reed for his comments, and all of you for being a part of this. There's a lot coming up in the next couple of months, and we'll hope that we'll see you down the road there. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thanks, everyone.
Tabane.